Bill C-368 has the potential to influence the future of the Canadian natural health industry, including your ability to access and sell natural health products. On April 29th, Bill C-368 began its second reading in the House of Commons, where MPs discussed the merit of this bill for 1 hour. As you'll see in a moment, this conversation went extremely well, with Conservative, NDP, and Bloc Québécois MPs all pledging their support for Bill C-368.
Order. It being 7:15, pursuant to Standing Order 37, the House will now proceed to the consideration of Bill C-368 under private members' business. Orders of the day.
Business. Consideration at second reading of Bill C-368, an act to amend the Food and Drug Act, natural health product, standing in the name of Mr. Calkins.
Mr. Calkins, seconded by Mr. Viss, moves that Bill C-368, an act to amend the Food and Drugs Act, natural health products, be now read a second time and referred to the Standing Committee on Health. Debate. The Honourable Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise in the House today and talk about the changes that have been made to Canada's natural health product regime by the Liberals, with the support of the NDP and the Greens, in Budget Implementation Act Bill C-47. So for the Canadians watching at home, what is C-47 and what happened? Well, last year at about this time, Bill C-47 was passed in the House of Commons. This is a Budget Implementation Act. It's supposed to actually only change the law insofar as what the budget policy of the day was talking about. However, somebody snuck a few clauses in that particular bill that actually changed the definition of natural health products to be the same as therapeutic products, like drugs that you would get a prescription for that have a drug identification number. So that's the problem, and the underlying problem with all of that for the folks that are watching along at home is that the industry wasn't consulted at all about these particular changes. As a matter of fact, I don't remember a single MP debating that during the Budget Implementation Act debates. I don't remember it coming up at committee. Nobody from the industry was called to the committee to testify about these particular issues. And it was only several months after the bill had actually passed that I think people began to wake up and realize that Health Canada was proceeding with their self-care framework because they had these newfound powers under Bill C-47. So that basically goes back to Health Canada now trying to get care and control of therapeutic or natural health products to the same effect that they have with therapeutics. But if you go back to 1998, the Health Committee here in the in the House of Commons, the Health Committee actually issued a report with 53 recommendations. This is the 98 report of 53 recs. It basically said that in no uncertain terms that natural health products are not therapeutic drugs. I'll remind everybody in this House that that happened under a majority Chrétien government, so there would have been a majority of Liberals on that committee at that time. That's the conclusion that they drew, and that was the template going forward. Fast forward to 2014. When Vanessa's Law was passed, there was a lot of debate and discussion at that particular point in time. And again, it was reaffirmed that natural health products are not therapeutic products and are exempted from Vanessa's Law. Then you fast forward to 2021, and the Auditor General's report came out. The Auditor General was very critical of Health Canada's ability to properly manage certain aspects of the natural health product regime, particularly when it came to looking at post-market monitoring and doing tests on samples of the products that were on the shelves and so on. But most importantly in that report, the Auditor General took the strange step of actually going and taking 75 products. Now, these weren't random products off the shelf in Canada. These were 75 products that were deemed problematic from the beginning, and they used that, which gives a false narrative that somehow natural health products in Canada are unsafe. I can assure you that that is simply not true, but Health Canada nonetheless is using this information to claim that they need the powers under Vanessa's Law. And what would entail there? Well, what would entail there is Health Canada would now have a self-funding methodology so they can apply massive amounts of licensing fees and product registration fees onto a very small industry when you compare it to the size of the pharmaceutical industry. And it was going to likely cause, according to everybody that you talk to in the industry, it's likely going to cause massive loss of products and a lot of chaos. So that's the primary impact for the Canadians that are watching at home is cost. So if you don't already know, you should know that Canada is already the most regulated natural health product industry in the world. As a matter of fact, Canada's brand on natural health products is better than the United States, better than Mexico, better than virtually anywhere in the world. And our products, our manufacturers and our exporters actually have already in place, prior to Bill C-47, the best regulatory reputation that's out there. So we are a growing industry in this country. The industry is growing so fast, and it's growing in leaps and bounds because of that proper regulation that existed prior to C-47. And like I said, whether it's our producers, our manufacturers, our distributors, but under the new self-care framework, Health Canada started out with these new site licenses. Now, you might not know this, but if you're a manufacturer or if you're a packager or if you're a distributor, you have to have something called a site license from Health Canada. You can't do this without a site license. That site license was free up until Bill C-47, and now with the new proposed regulations coming into force, the initial site license fee was going to be $40,000 per year. I think they've negotiated down with the industry to $20,000 a year. But just imagine if you're a traditional Chinese medicine establishment, or if you're doing the Ayurvedic medicine, or if you're doing homeopathy, if you have to get a site license fee of $20,000 every year, that's almost, well, everybody basically in those three parts of the natural health product industry have already said that's going to shut them down. So this is a very onerous fee. And then there would be a new product fee. So any new natural health product that you wanted to bring to the market would be upwards of $4,000 to get your natural product number. You know, if you buy your vitamin C, you go to the store, there's a little NPN down there. There's about 50,000 natural products registered in Canada right now. But if you're going to bring a new product to the market, that'll cost you an additional $4,000 per product. So in that particular year, if you're got a site license and a new product, you're looking at $24,000 before you even get anything coming in for revenues. So if you're practicing traditional Chinese medicine and somebody needs a new remedy, then you need to import some of the ingredients from China or someplace else in the world. You're going to bring those products in. You're going to be paying thousands of dollars to get that product registered in Canada, and you might only be in the market to sell 10 bottles to a client that's got a need for a very specific thing. This is going to basically kill traditional Chinese medicine practitioners in Canada. And of course, the right to sell license that Health Canada is bringing in for each product will be several $100s per bottle, over $300 per product. So now you're dealing with thousands and thousands of dollars every year for this industry. It's going to kill innovation, it's going to stifle growth, and it's going to basically drive that innovation and product development out of Canada. So what's the impact? Well, the industry experts are saying that up to 70% of products that are currently on our shelves in Canada with a natural product number on them, this is very important that they have that natural product number, they will be likely disappearing in the years to come when Health Canada implements the self-care framework. 3 out of 5 manufacturers, retailers, practitioners, and distributors say that they will actually have to close up their doors. So we're basically losing approximately 60% of the industry if Health Canada goes ahead with implementing this cost recovery fee program for the natural product industry. And the job losses are direct and indirect. Right now, you may be interested to know that about 54,000 people in Canada are directly employed in the natural health product industry. And they figure about 66% of those jobs will be affected or negatively impact once the self-care framework is brought in. And you would think that this Prime Minister, being the self-professed feminist that he is, would have actually done a gender analysis on the impact of Bill C-47 when it comes to natural health products. But there was no gender-based analysis. And you might be surprised to know that over 80% of the consumers of natural health products in Canada are women. 90% of practitioners, so this is your homeopathic doctors and so on, 90% of practitioners are women. Well over 50% of the micro businesses are female-owned in this particular industry, and 84% of direct-to-customer sellers are women. So this is very, very important. It's a very important industry to the women in Canada. And we're going to lose these businesses. And it's too bad because we're already, like I said, we're already one of the safest and most well-regulated environments in the globe, around the globe when it comes to natural health products. And over 80% of Canadians, with the most recent information that we have, are users of natural health products. And of those 80%, when you ask them how satisfied they are with their natural health products. Over 99% of those people say they're very confident that the natural health products that they acquire on the shelves in Canadian stores are safe, healthy, and work for them. And that's true. You'll find that across. I've been traveling across the country, Madam Speaker. I can tell you without any hesitation whatsoever that Canadians are very, very concerned about losing access to the only part of their healthcare system that they have care and control over, which is natural health products. So, and for those of you that are interested, Deloitte has done an audit on some of the findings that Health Canada has been using. They've claimed that over 700 people over a 2-year period were adversely affected by natural health products, but if you actually dig down into the data, and this is Government of Canada data, they found that only 32 people over 3 years were actually affected. Unfortunately, there were 3 deaths, but if you take a look at the other factors associated with those deaths, all of those people were also taking prescription drugs at the same time. So there's a lot more misinformation that's out there right now that's attacking this industry unnecessarily, and we certainly don't. We shouldn't be making a hasty decision in this place by backdooring in legislative changes like we did in Bill C-47. Now, I want to talk a little bit about consumer protection because I think this is going to be the argument that the government's going to use. But you may also not know this, but if you actually buy products online from outside of the country, those aren't necessarily regulated the same. As a matter of fact, I can guarantee you they're not regulated the same as the Canadian marketplace is. They will not have that natural product number on them. And I'll just give you, so you can buy a 90-day supply. Right now, Health Canada allows you to buy a 90-day supply. You can ship it in with Amazon or any number of these direct-to-customer purchasing apps or opportunities that are out there. And they'll all be unregulated by Health Canada. They won't have a natural product number on them very likely. And I'll just give you an example. They're marketed to Canadians on social media, on Facebook, other types of marketing methods, and Canadians are buying these things. I'll give you an example. It's called You-Marry. It's made in Mexico. It's marketed as a natural health product. It's marketed to seniors, and seniors are buying this product up, but it actually contains diclofenac, which is actually a prescription drug. And this is the problem, not our industry that's within the borders of Canada. So Health Canada, in its attempt, is actually going to do the opposite of what their intended results will be, which is they're going to drive the businesses through regulatory burden, costs, and overhead. Their businesses are going to say, look, I can go operate in Mexico or the United States far cheaper than I can operate in Canada. So they're going to be down there in the same environment selling direct to customer over the border with 90-day supplies. Health Canada is going to lose care and control over that and the quality assurance that Canadians have come to depend on. It's not good for consumers at all. And I should let people know that are watching, Health Canada already has incredible powers. You're going to hear some members of Parliament, I think, stand up in this place in the debate of this bill and say, well, there's no mandatory recall that Health Canada has when it comes to natural health products. Well, here's some of the powers that you might not know that Health Canada already has. They already have the ability to issue a stop sale, and they do it from time to time. A stop sale order goes out, and that means immediately all the products on all the shelves in all the stores in Canada have to be stopped being sold. They do have the power, if they chose to implement it, for personal use import at the border. If they wanted to take a look at what's coming across the border, that would be a great place for Health Canada to start looking for opportunities to keep Canadians safer. They have the ability to seize. They have seizure provisions already in the legislation and regulations, which means that they can go and seize any product from any of the points along the line, from manufacturing through packaging, through distributing, and at the retail stores. They already have seizure capabilities in law and in regulation. They can revoke the site license for any manufacturer, any packager, any labeler, any importer. They already have that power to revoke that site license. They have the ability to mandate a label change. So if there is a health concern brought up from the Canadian public, they can actually go and investigate, and then they can tell the manufacturer or the labeler that they need to change the label to reflect some health concern or some other information. They can do that. They can inspect any site that has a site license. They can go automatically into a manufacturer. They can go into a producer anywhere where they have a site license is required. They can go in and conduct an audit anytime they want. They can inspect any product off the shelf. They can take it, send it to the lab, and do a verification check. They approve every natural product number that's out there that's being sold on the shelf right now. Nothing is sold without their pre-authorized consent, and they can revoke a natural product number anytime they want. That's already an immense amount of power. They don't need any more. So when you hear about the mandatory recall, that's simply a red herring, Madam Speaker. Health Canada already has an immense amount of power. Now, one of the other things, when you're defined as a therapeutic drug, that also subjects you to $5 million a day fines. There is nobody in the natural product industry that can afford a $5 million a day administrative penalty fine. Health Canada would actually unilaterally, without an ombudsman, without any ability to appeal, would have the ability to basically shut this industry down at their earliest whim or convenience. And it's already causing a chill in the industry. It's driving businesses away from Canada. And we need to stop this. So for the Canadians that are out there, call your Liberal MP, call your NDP MP, call your Green Party MP. Tell them to change how they voted on C-47. Get them to vote in favor of Bill 368. Let's get this bill to committee. Let's have an actual proper consultation with the industry. And if there is something that needs to be changed, we can at least have an honest conversation and Canadians can be involved in a transparent way. Passing this bill through the back door, tucking it into a Budget Implementation Act is shoddy lawmaking, it's shoddy policy making, and it flies in the face of everything that we've done to this point. I encourage my colleagues, Madam Speaker, to vote in favor of Bill C-368. Thank you.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I appreciate both the member presenting this legislation, but also his speech very well informed, provided good information, I think, for Canadians. And he is right to point out that this provision was included in C-47 in omnibus legislation, which is something that the NDP has always opposed under the former Harper Conservative government and under the current government. The idea that you would put in the Budget Implementation Act a whole range of other measures simply does not allow for the legislative scrutiny that is so important. And he is right to point out C-47 did that, made those changes. C-51 under the former Harper Conservative government purported to do the same thing. He, I thought, was very eloquent in the fact that we need to move forward with this legislation, and the NDP will be supporting this legislation at second reading. We want to get this to committee. We want to have the committee do the kind of the fulsome work of finally consulting the industry, natural health practitioners, so that we finally get something that hasn't happened under either bill, C-51 or C-47. Get the kind of scrutiny that is so important. I myself consume a lot of natural health products.
The Honourable Member has to have time for more questions. Can I have a question, please?
To know what my colleague uses in terms of natural health products.
Wow. The Honourable Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
So notwithstanding the backhanded compliments he gave me in the preamble to his question, I will say this. I've used quite a few of these things. My wife uses these products. I use L-lysine to help with cold sores. I take a stick pack of electrolytes every morning to make sure I have enough salts and things to get through my day. One day I was sitting here in the House of Commons and I was starting to have what I thought was a convulsion listening to the Prime Minister speak. Turns out I was magnesium deficient. I just had a tick in my face. So natural health products have actually made listening to the Prime Minister palatable in this place for me, if you can believe such a thing.
Questions et commentaires, questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Peterborough Court.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you so much to my honourable colleague for bringing this bill forward. It is truly a critical bill, and I hope everybody listens to his speech where he outlined everything. If I could, I have sort of a two-part question for him. Number one, why? Why would the Liberals do this? Why would they want to demolish an industry that is so important, in particular, like he said, to women, but also for so many families who rely on their vitamin D, their B12, their magnesium. These are things that are very critical, especially with people with different, they may not have access to a doctor because we have a healthcare crisis in this country. So I'm curious what he thinks about that.
Honourable Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Well, Madam Speaker, my friend and colleague from Peterborough Kawartha is exactly right. Generally speaking, when you see something being changed in a manner like this, you ask who benefits. So who benefits from this? Well, Health Canada would actually have the ability to charge whatever fees that they want in order to regulate the industry. Could you imagine such power that you can actually generate the revenue in such a way? And who knows what pressures they're getting from other outside actors. Lots of people muse and speculate with me who they think is actually putting this pressure on Health Canada to do this. But as I outlined in my speech, I think Health Canada has lots of power. If they need a little bit more resources in order to do inspections post-product getting to the shelf, if they need a little bit more help at the border, well, that's a reasonable conversation that we can have. This industry is $3 billion a year in Canada. This is how much Canadians rely on these products for their own health. And that's the prevention, the healthcare prevention that keeps people actually out of the hospital, keeps them out of our healthcare system. This is the beauty of it, and it's something where people have the ability to make personal health choices for themselves. They have the freedom to make those choices from themselves. So if Health Canada needs a little bit more money to do something, this industry generates $150 million in GST revenue every year. There's plenty of resources. If they need a few more people to do something, they can simply go talk to the finance minister rather than doing the underhanded approach.
I have une petite question, l'honorable député de Montcalm.
Oui. The honourable member, a question? Thank you, Madam Speaker. Doesn't my colleague have the impression that Health Canada is using a sledgehammer to kill a fly just in order to protect its credibility further to certain events?
I thank my colleague for the question. I would say he's exactly right. If there is any problems, and I actually don't think there is any problem, the negotiations that came out of C-51, the consultation with the industry back at that time during 2014, left our industry in a very good sweet spot where we have just the right amount of regulation and enough freedom and enough opportunity that our industry is actually growing. It behooves me. I simply can't understand why the current Liberal government wants to kill another industry in this.
Reprise du débat, resuming debate, the honourable member for Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm honoured to speak before this House today to discuss an issue of paramount importance to the health and safety of Canadians, the safety and availability of natural health products, also known as NHPs. In order to make the natural health product market safer for consumers and support Canadians in making informed choices, last year our government expanded Vanessa's law to include NHPs. Doing this allows the government to act when serious health and safety risks are identified, such as the ability to require a recall if products are unsafe. Our number one priority is to keep Canadians healthy and safe. Bill C-368 would remove the government's ability to ensure the safety and efficacy of these crucial health products. Passing this bill would mean that the government could mandate the recall of a tube of lipstick or a head of lettuce, but not a contaminated supplement. This is why the government will be opposing this bill. As I saw, some of the members of opposite may be supporting this bill, so we will look forward having it in the committee if that's the case, and we'll further cover the points that I'm about to cover. My remarks, however, today will delve into the vital role of NHPs play in the life of Canadians, the current landscape of NHPs, and the need for greater oversight of NHPs to guarantee public safety. Before proceeding further, I must highlight the exceptional engagement from the community of Richmond Hill on this matter. Our office has received over 1,200 communications, including emails, petitions, phone calls, and pamphlets from constituents deeply concerned about the regulation and safety of NHPs. Since 2020, I've also met with Canadian Health Food Association, which represent many NHP small business owners in my riding. One of these businesses is Platinum Naturals, whose team I met with in past February to hear their important feedback and concern on the impact of NHP regulation on their business. This overwhelming response from my constituents underscore a national discourse on the necessity for a regulatory framework that ensures the safety of NHPs, supports small businesses operating in the industry, as well as respect the autonomy of the Canadians in their health management practices. As I delve into the implication of Bill C-368, I want to first focus on the vital role NHPs plays in the life of Canadians, followed by the current landscape of NHP and lastly, the need for greater oversight to guarantee public safety. NHPs, which includes vitamins, minerals, herbal remedies, and daily use products like toothpaste and sunscreen, are part of our integral healthcare practices. Their popularity is undeniable, with the number of authorized products in Canada skyrocketing from around 50,000 in 2004 to over 200,000 today. Madam Speaker, this demand underscores the critical importance of ensuring these products are not only effective, but also safe for Canadian families. Madam Speaker, it is fundamental to understand that although NHPs are lower risk, they are not without risk, especially if products are contaminated, advertised in a misleading manner, or used improperly. As much as NHPs offer potential health benefit, the risk associated with substandard or improperly labeled NHPs underscore the need for appropriate oversight. I will now highlight previous and current legislative landscape of NHPs. In Canada, NHPs are regulated under the Food and Drug Act and specifically under the National Health Products Regulations, which were established in 2004. A pivotal moment in Canadian legislative history was the enactment of the Protecting Canadians from Unsafe Drug Act, also known as Vanessa Law, in 2014. This introduced improvement in Health Canada's ability to collect post-market safety information on drugs and medical devices and take appropriate actions such as issuing a mandatory recall when a serious risk to healthcare is identified. However, NHPs were not yet incorporated under the scope of this law. As a result, for close to a decade, Health Canada's ability to take action on NHPs when health and safety issues occur has been limited. This lack of equivalent safety power for NHPs had compelled Health Canada to depend on voluntary intervention by industry, which have not consistently worked in the past to protect Canadians against real health and safety risks. A significant shift in NHP regulation was marked by the adoption of Bill C-368 in 2023, which incorporated NHPs under the scope of Vanessa's Law. This empowered Health Canada with enhanced authorities to better protect consumer safety, such as by recalling unsafe product from the market and mandating label changes where serious harm to health is identified. This goes into my third point, Madam Speaker, which is the pertinent need for greater oversight of NHPs. Between 2021 to 2022, Health Canada has conducted inspection to assess regulatory compliance of 36 NHP manufacturers and importers. All of the inspection identified compliance issues ranging in severity, with 15 of the 36 sites reported issues serious enough to consider non-compliant. Between 2021 to 2023 alone, there were also 100 voluntary recalls of licensed NHPs due to safety concern, including contamination risk and the presence of harmful substances. These figures are not mere statistics, Madam Speaker. They represent potential harm to Canadian families and highlights the need to have stronger tools available to protect consumers from serious health and safety risks. Madam Speaker, with all that said, it is important to consider the crucial need for oversight of NHPs as we consider the implication of Bill C-368, which could significantly alter the government's ability to regulate the safety and efficacy of these important products. As the NHP market has and continues to grow significantly over the years in Canada, we continue to support access to safe NHP marketplace for Canadians to maintain and improve their health. The extension of the Vanessa's Law to NHP underscores this commitment. As we navigate this conversation, let's prioritize the safety and trust of Canadians in their health products choices and ensure that the regulatory mechanism is in place and required to address the complexity of the NHP industries. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you for allowing me to voice this consideration on behalf of my constituents in Richmond Hill and Canadians everywhere who rely on the NHPs for their health and well-being. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Reprise du débat, l'honorable député.
The honourable member for Montcalm. I think the honourable member is running a little bit behind. The honourable member for Montcalm. I would start, Madam Speaker, my speech this evening by mentioning two images. The first, nothing is worse than disease, but the remedy can be. And the second one, you don't take a sledgehammer to kill a fly, you use an appropriate tool, a fly swatter. But right now, the government, in secret, and that's the problem with this bill, with C-368, discreetly, in an annex of the 2024 budget, introduced in C-47 provisions that since the beginning have always distinguished natural health products from drugs, and rightly so, because when you look at the drug industry and the pharmaceutical industry in general, these companies might have recovery costs, but they do have 20-year patents. They're able to make a profit, and there's no tax on drugs. The government is making a ton of money in terms of taxing natural health products so that it can pay for inspection services, because everyone agrees. When we met in September, everyone agreed with the fact that consumers deserve effective products that are safe and guaranteed, and that is up to Health Canada to do its job. So when you look at the Auditor General's report, well, first, there was a small issue in my view that was pathological, because rather than just looking at things randomly, we targeted products, locations, companies where we knew there were issues. So obviously, as soon as we know there's an issue, it leads to a high rate of problems that are raised. There are roughly 91,000 natural health products. We had analyzed 75,000 of them, or 75 of them were targeted, and we concluded that since 2014, Health Canada was not doing its job in guaranteeing safe products, those that were sampled. And Health Canada was caught with their pants down, like we say, and now they're trying to get some credibility by taking out the heavy artillery. We've always wanted to ensure that there was a balance when a natural health product, or access to one. We want to make sure that we can have the right to choose a product while assuring that Health Canada does do its job by inspecting products. Since 2014, between 2004 and 2014, there have been 53 recommendations. And when in September we heard from Health Canada and the chief scientist, we realized that their answers were not credible. When I asked them, do you require recovery costs? Did you do an impact study on the industry, on small and medium enterprises? Their answer was, we base our work on the Treasury Board directives, and I think that the Treasury Board, it wants to bring money in, but what services will it provide, since the very beginning, this industry generates tax, but they're still not able to ensure that there is an inspection throughout the mandate and today, because there are a few issues that have been raised. And the pharmaceutical industry, Madam Speaker, while I asked the chief scientist the question, out of over 17 years, how many side effects stemmed from natural health products? And I asked him to table the figures. We haven't received a reply on this question. And when I asked the pharmaceutical industry, what figures do you have about side effects? They said that they did have the figures, but they didn't table them either. But we know full well, even if these products are approved by Health Canada, pharmaceutical products do sometimes have very serious side effects. But we don't disqualify the entire industry. We just do our work and we make sure that we do it well. But unlike what one would think and what the government would like us to believe, well, what I'm talking about, the problem with C-47 happened in June when we were voting on the March 2023 budget. We received all sorts of letters and people start informing themselves. And as legislators, we don't have any impacts on regulations. We vote on legislation. And then regulations accompany how the law is to be applied. Well, that's the issue. C-368 is necessary so that we can send legislation to committee, so we can do our work as parliamentarians, so we can question the work in terms of regulations and make sure that natural health products are now contained to the same standards as pharmaceutical products under Vanessa's law. We wouldn't be here today if the government was more transparent, and if we had done the consultations that were required, and if we had worked with everyone to make sure that we found points of convergence so we don't hamper an industry that Quebecers and Canadians have a right to have access to. They have a right to a choice. No one is forcing a natural health product through a prescription. I'm not forced to buy it. I only buy it if I inform myself about it. Yes, there can be risks, Madam Speaker, and of course, we have to respect pharmacists' advice. Yes, there can be drug interactions, but drug interactions occur between prescribed medications by a doctor versus a pharmaceutical product that I buy. None of this is to be minimized, but it's not because there are a few delinquents in an industry that you need to undermine the entire industry and hamper small and medium-sized enterprises that do want to sell products that are healthy, because that is their prime motivation, people's health. Therefore, we wouldn't be here today if we had more transparency and if people who did come to witness in September, provide testimony, had the courage to remind us of this, to remind us that when we said to that your cost recovery model is based on that of the pharmaceutical industry, they didn't say anything about that, as if we wouldn't realize that at some point saying C-47 would sneak this in. They took the pharmaceutical model and they transposed it to that of the natural health product industry without allowing us to debate it. And that's why we had 2 sittings on this, to gather more information on the problem now, until now. We haven't done any more consultations, and that's why we're going to vote in favor of C-368, so that legislators who never get to revise regulations will be able to bring this back to committee and work on this legislation to ensure that we strike a balance between what the government would like in terms of the 81% of the 91,000 products that are deficient or or the labeling is incorrect, that is a serious affirmation, but it doesn't reflect reality, because in 2015 alone, a randomized study showed that more than 90% of these products were in line with legislation. So what happened in the meantime? Perhaps if Health Canada had done its job, did the inspections, sent people their guidelines, what they want to focus on, and so that we're sure when production is done that the products are correct, we wouldn't be here today. So, Madam Speaker, the Bloc will vote in favour of this legislation. Thank you.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I said earlier, thanking my colleague, the Member of Parliament from Red Deer Lacombe, that we support this legislation. We support Bill 368 for a number of reasons. And I want to start by saying that as with over 70% of Canadians, I'm a consumer of natural health products. I use those products as everyone else does. The 70% of the Canadian population that does so uses vitamins and minerals, uses herbal remedies, homeopathic medicines, probiotics. Many Canadians use traditional medicines, like traditional Chinese medicines or indigenous medicines as well. There are a wide variety of products that are on the market. And as has already been stated, the reality is that we have a very robust natural health product sector that is very carefully regulated in a way that ensures that the products are of good quality. And that's why when we look at the natural health product sector, we see so many Canadians consuming, and at the same time, no side effects or downsides to the consumption of those products. It's because the products are effective. If they're not effective, we stop using them. And I've tried a number of products over the years. Some of the products work really well, other products not so much. And as consumers, we have that ability to distinguish and to make sure that we're choosing products that are appropriate for us. This is not the pharmaceutical sector. These are not prescriptions that are given out. And I do have a family doctor who is very good at suggesting products sometimes that aren't part of a prescription, but simply part of a suggestion. And he's turned out to be right every single time about the kind of products that we can take. For just an example of magnesium, which is a vitamin product. My friend from Red Deer Lacombe mentioned it earlier as well. For those of us who are on flights back and forth across the country, 5,000 kilometers twice a week, so we're doing every month. My colleague from North Island, Powell River, is in the same situation. We're going around this planet every month in terms of the amount of time that we're spending on airplanes, getting back to our constituency to ensure that we're serving our constituents, and then coming to Ottawa to do that important work that we're doing here. Well, the reality is you need to ensure when you're doing that, because you're in cramped space, if you want to avoid leg cramps, you take magnesium. And my doctor was the one who suggested it, and ever since then, I've made sure that I'm taking that appropriate product. It makes sense. I know you agree, Madam Speaker, even though you don't have as far to go when you have to go back to your constituents. So there's a wide range of products that are available, a wide range of products that do make a difference for consumers who find that their products just aren't up to speed. They can change, try another product, or simply decide they're not going to use it. So the reality of what is already a flourishing and effective sector, I think, was diminished by the government incorporating into C-47, incorporating in omnibus legislation, these clauses that simply put natural health products in a completely different situation, heavily regulated with the costs that a number of speakers have already indicated that were absolutely inappropriate. Now, ever since I've been here, the NDP caucus, and certainly for years before that, the NDP caucus has decried omnibus legislation. We saw this under the former Harper Conservative government. We see this under the current Liberal government. Massive budget implementation acts that are 700-800 pages, and within them incorporate what are really poison pills. Certain clauses that are put in there that ultimately serve as changes in legislation, but then we can see with regulations that are not part of Parliament's purview or part of the government's purview can actually have detrimental impacts. And this was the case with C-47. This was tried before with C-51 under the Harper Conservative government. They tried to very heavily and inappropriately apply additional regulations to natural health products. That was pushed back on. But with C-47, as omnibus legislation that then led to the regulatory changes, we are in the situation that we find ourselves in now. And that has to change. And that's why we're supportive of Bill C-368. What that does is provide for the kinds of hearings at the committee stage that will allow us to really determine the full extent of how the existing sector is regulated effectively and how detrimental these changes, both suggested in C-51 a few years ago and currently through C-47, how these changes have been detrimental to both the industry itself, which is a Canadian success story, but also the impact on consumers that are using these vitamins, the probiotics, the homeopathic medicines, using them effectively and finding it more difficult to access potentially these natural health products because of the actions of Health Canada and the actions of the government. So it makes good sense to take Bill C-368, to put it in place, to have those hearings, and then determine what is appropriate. It is very clear that those regulatory changes were absolutely excessive and have had a profound negative impact. Alors, Madame la Présidente, c'est ça qu'on est en train.
Madam Speaker, that's what we're talking about. We're saying that with C-47 and a government that's acting with Health Canada, without consultation, without impact assessments, without studying the costs, as my colleague mentioned, this will mean that SMEs that bring forward natural health products and that are subject to a regulatory framework that is much more appropriate for the pharmaceutical industry, which is the sector with the biggest profits in North America. That's remarkable. Well, that is why the NDP is pushing for pharmacare. Countries that have pharmacare, we've seen that in those countries, pharmaceutical companies have had to reduce their costs. In some cases, the prices have actually gone down by 90%. Here, big pharma companies are very powerful. It makes no sense to create a regulatory framework that treats small businesses that are offering a range of safe products on a smaller scale, and then to have the same framework for large multinational pharma companies who are bringing in big profits. That is why it is inappropriate for the government to act in this manner and to add this clause to a lengthy omnibus bill and there will be all sorts of changes to the regulatory framework with the results that we're seeing today. For us, therefore, it is unacceptable that that clause be inserted into an omnibus bill. It was unacceptable when the former Harper government did this kind of thing, and it's also unacceptable today under the Liberal government. Thanks to this bill from my colleague for Red Deer Lacombe, we now have an opportunity to fix this problem. We have an opportunity to determine the impacts of all this on the natural health sector. We can see the financial effects on consumers. We can see all of the impacts of the decision to add this little clause last year in an omnibus bill. The NDP, therefore, will be supporting this bill, and we are looking forward to the important discussions during study of this bill.
The honourable member for Mission, Matsqui Fraser-Canyon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to speak to Bill 368, an act to amend the Food and Drugs Act, Natural Health Products. In a time when we are seeing more businesses close than open each month and business insolvency skyrocketing, the last thing we need to be doing as parliamentarians is pouring even higher costs and more red tape onto the backs of small business owners in the natural health sector. Across Canada, I'm hearing from small businesses that this government has turned their back on them. They simply cannot keep up with the higher costs and burdensome red tape that the Liberals, with the support of the NDP, keep piling on them. According to Statistics Canada, more businesses closed than opened in December, the fifth time in 6 months that this was the case. On January 1st, the government increased payroll taxes. In February, insolvencies rose 58.1% year over year, according to the Superintendent of Bankruptcy. In March, the Senior Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada called the lack of productivity in Canada's economy an emergency. On April 1st, the government hiked the carbon tax by 23%. And just last week, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business reported a drastic decline in both short-term and long-term business confidence, with both dropping by 5.4 points in their monthly business barometer. So what does all this have to do with natural health products? Well, last spring, the NDP Liberal government passed Bill C-47, allowing Health Canada to regulate natural health products in the same way as therapeutic synthetic drugs. Canadians depend on natural health products, which include vitamins, protein powders, probiotics, and even fluoride-free toothpaste. Think of the young guy in the gym taking a supplement, or the mom who uses Eastern medicine and frequents the local Chinese herbal medicine shop. These are the people Health Canada is going after. As a British Columbian, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that at the same time, this government is trying to prevent your teenager from getting the supplement powder they want. They legalized possession of fentanyl, which led to record deaths from illicit substances the very same year over an argument about stigmatization in British Columbia. After 9 years, Canadians can see clearly that there is no common sense in the approach this government is taking for natural health products. The changes made will reduce choice, increase costs for consumers, and drive businesses' investment in product development out of Canada. So what is exactly changing for natural health products? First, Health Canada is implementing new regulations that treat natural health products the same as over-the-counter synthetic drugs, placing significant red tape on the small and medium-sized businesses who produce and sell these products. This will result in fewer options for Canadians, pushing consumers to foreign online retailers where you may have no idea where the product came from or what, in fact, is in it. And second, Health Canada is introducing new fees on licensing, manufacturing, labeling, importing, and packaging that could cost a business more than $100,000. I looked it up before my speech tonight. A licensing fee, over $20,000. A site amendment fee, close to $5,000. a Class 3 product license application up to $58,000, and a product license amendment of up to $23,000. I've spoken to owners of health food and supplement stores in my riding and across Canada, and they are terrified about what these changes will mean for their businesses and their customers. These new fees and regulations will mean fewer products at higher prices on their store shelves, potentially depriving consumers of the benefits they rely on for their health and well-being. For many stores, these changes could mean they close entirely. A buddy of mine, Mike Bjorndal, we went to high school together. He left a stable job. He started a small business with a few other partners in the natural health food supplement industry. He told me directly that if these changes go through, they're either moving their shop to America, reducing their taxes paid in Canada, and shutting their doors. That is the consequence of what Health Canada is doing right now. The Vanderwall family. Mrs. Vanderwall runs a side business with supplements to compensate or add to a little bit of her husband's income just to get by with their 7 kids. They rely on the current regulatory framework to pay their monthly bills. The natural health product industry continues to introduce new ideas and improve products. However, higher licensing fees will discourage companies from investing in research and development, meaning fewer new products being developed or manufactured here in Canada. Natural health products play a crucial role in addressing unique health concerns that conventional medicine may not adequately address. Higher fees will invariably lead to fewer options and consumers being forced to turn to pharmaceutical alternatives or products that are not made in Canada. I referenced the alarming statistics on business insolvencies earlier, and these changes are only going to make things worse in an industry that generates billions of dollars in economic growth in Canada. Given all that, I am very proud to stand and support the member from Red Deer Lacombs, Bill C-368, to repeal specifically sections 500 to 504 of Bill C-47 and restore the status quo on natural health product regulations. As he mentioned in his speech, under the current rules, the government can already have a stop sale order provision, has seizure provisions, has inspection provisions, and they already pre-authorize the products on Canadian store shelves. Health Canada's 2019 summary report on adverse reactions, medical device incidents, and health product recalls highlighted that of the 96,000 plus adverse reactions filed, only 3.8% were related to the natural health sector. We know these products are safe and that existing regulations are sufficient. Since last spring, my office, like the member from Richmond Hill, has literally heard from thousands of people concerned about what the government is doing and the increase in red tape they are suggesting through these regulations. I would point out that instead of saying we need these regulations because of the growth in the industry, I would point out that his constituents, like mine, are simply scared of more government overreach that is going to impact their economic well-being and the viability of their businesses. No matter where you go in Canada, on every main street, practically in every single shopping mall in our country, we're going to have a natural health or supplement style store. These stores provide valuable products that keep Canadians healthy, that improve our mental and physical well-being. The last thing we should be doing right now is attacking those very businesses that millions of Canadians rely upon, Madam Speaker. So with that, I implore everyone in this chamber to support this legislation, stand behind our small businesses and our wealth creators that provide real and adequate services for Canadians under the existing regulations. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Bravo. The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands for 1.5 minutes.
Well, I think in that 1.5 minutes, Madam Speaker, what I'm going to do is identify what I see as some myths that have unfortunately been created in the dialogue around this piece of legislation. One of those myths is that there is no data to support the need for the changes that the government is making in the NHP program. When in reality, Madam Speaker, in 2 years, Health Canada has received reports of over 1,000 adverse reactions in the NHP use had a suspected role, of which 772 were serious. So they either required hospitalization or were life-threatening. And another fact to back up the fact that that myth is not true is that a recent audit found that 88% of sample NHPs were advertised with false and misleading product information, and 56% had misleading label information. I look forward to continuing this later on.
The honourable member will have an opportunity when this piece of legislation comes back. La période prévue pour l'étude des
The time provided for the consideration of private members' business has now expired. Pursuant to Standard Order 96-1, the order is dropped from